My boyfriend stole my love letters and gave them to his fiancée, so we crashed their engagement party. A year later, he showed up claiming we were soulmates. I met Leo at a used bookstore. He was charming in the kind of way that made you feel like the main character. He quoted poetry, had a crooked smile, and said he loved women who had fire in their bones. He slid me his number tucked inside a book we both reached for. He texted me that night. Leo volunteered at an animal shelter, loved indie films, and made me playlists with titles like, For When You Feel Too Much. I told him about losing my mom young. He said, You carry it well. He made me feel like I was the only person on earth worth listening to. We were together for 4 months, and it was intense. Although we agreed, no social media presence. He said it gave him anxiety. I told myself it meant he was different, pure, real. Then, things changed. I gave him a rare poetry book for his birthday. A week later, I saw it in a tagged post by someone else, thanking him for the wonderful gift. I thought it was a coincidence. Then things got weirder. A poem I sent him showed up as a caption, where he was once again tagged, but I wasn't. I asked about it. He said I was overanalyzing, then dropped a voice memo about how I was his safe space. I told myself I was lucky. He was different, sensitive, but something kept scratching at the back of my mind. So I did what any woman would do. I scrolled. I looked for any and all tagged posts he was in, then reverse image searched each photo. It led me to a woman named Sophia. Sophia had engagement photos, and there was Leo, grinning like the devil in white linen. The caption said, Can't wait to marry my soulmate. I didn't react at first. I watched. Sophia had posted a love letter, handwritten, familiar phrasing, too familiar. It was a love letter I had written to him. Then I saw a quote she posted about Leo, the same quote he sent to me the previous week. I made a burner account and messaged her, said I thought we should talk. We met in a coffee shop. She showed up wearing a scarf I had knitted Leo for Christmas. He said he lost it. Her lip trembled when she ordered. We matched up everything. He told her his favorite poem was I Carry Your Heart With Me by E. E. Cummings. It was my favorite that I showed him. My favorite playlist he sent me. She created it and sent it to Leo. His nickname for her, the same as mine. He was Frankensteining us, stitching his perfect girl from both of us. Sophia whispered, Let's go nuclear. She suggested we crash the engagement party, to show everyone exactly the kind of man he was. I waited in her bedroom until the guests arrived. She clinked her glass and the room quieted. She announced she wanted to read out a love letter Leo had written for her. When she was done, Leo looked smugly around the room until she said, Wait, this says it was written by someone named Laura. Leo turned pale. She laughed and said, Let's try another. Laura, will you come over here? I walked over next to her and almost burst out laughing at Leo's expression. I pulled out a letter myself and read it, only to end it mentioning that it was actually addressed to Sophia, not me. Sophia handed Leo a manila folder. Inside were screenshots of poems he sent to each of us. It also had a copy of his vows for Sophia, which I had written for him in the form of a love letter. His face cracked like glass. His aunt walked out. One groomsman said, You're disgusting. Leo vanished. Deleted everything. A week later, a package showed up. No return address. Inside, the poetry book we bonded over. My name was written inside. A sticky note fell out. Thank you for being my true other half. Want to have lunch? I laughed and pulled out my phone to text her. We'd already exchanged numbers, checking in on each other daily since the party. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Leo again. I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning, scrolling through job listings and trying to pretend my life hadn't just imploded, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something, call it morbid curiosity, made me answer. His voice was different, smaller, like someone had let the air out of his confidence. He asked if we could talk, said he was in therapy now, working on himself. I told him there was nothing to talk about. He said he'd made mistakes, but he loved me, really loved me, that what we had was special, different from anything with her. I hung up before he could finish his rehearsed speech. Sophia texted me 20 minutes later. She'd gotten the same call, probably right after mine. Same script, same promises of change. We decided to meet up again at the same coffee shop, our unofficial headquarters for processing this bizarre situation. She looked tired, purple shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. Said Leo had been showing up at her gym at 6 a.m., her workplace at lunch, always with flowers and that stupid crooked smile that used to make us both melt. I told her he'd been leaving notes under my windshield wipers, poetry he claimed he wrote for me, but we both knew better now. Everything was borrowed, stolen, recycled. The harassment escalated gradually. He started sending long emails about how we didn't understand the pressure he was under, how he needed both of us to be complete, like we were puzzle pieces in his personal development, how we were being cruel by cutting him out when he was trying to grow. Sophia blocked him everywhere. I did too, but he kept finding ways. New numbers from burner phones, new emails with increasingly desperate usernames, friends of friends passing along messages because he'd convinced them he just needed closure. One night, Sophia called me crying. Her voice was shaky, scared in a way that made me grab my keys before she even explained. Leo had shown up at her sister's house during Sunday family dinner, brought a guitar, and tried to serenade her from the front lawn with a song he claimed to have written. Her dad, a gentle man who'd never raised his voice in his life, had to threaten to call the cops before Leo finally left. I drove over to her place, breaking several traffic laws on the way. We sat on her couch drinking wine straight from the bottle and comparing notes on his escalating behavior. That's when we realized something unexpected. Without Leo between us, without the constant comparison and competition he'd manufactured, we actually liked each other. A lot. We started hanging out more intentionally. Coffee became lunch at the Vietnamese place she loved. Lunch became dinner at the Italian restaurant I'd been wanting to try. She introduced me to her favorite bookstore, a chaotic used shop where the owner's cat slept on the philosophy section. I showed her the hiking trails I loved outside the city, teaching her how to identify birds by their calls. We talked about everything except Leo, about our jobs. She was a graphic designer who hated her micromanaging boss. I was a teacher considering graduate school. Our families, her 3 sisters who texted constantly, my dad who called every Sunday to check in. Our dreams. She wanted to open a bakery someday, specializing in French pastries. I was saving up to travel through Europe, had a whole Pinterest board of places to visit. 3 weeks after the engagement party disaster, Sophia texted me about a book signing. An author we both loved was coming to town, someone whose words we'd both quoted in our stolen letters to Leo. We went together, standing in line for 2 hours talking about our favorite chapters, the scenes that made us cry, the characters we saw ourselves in. When we got to the front, the author asked if we were together. Sophia looked at me with those brown eyes that had cried too many tears over an unworthy man. I looked at her, at the way she bit her lip when she was thinking. We We both said yes at the same time, then laughed at the synchronicity. After that, things shifted subtly but undeniably. Our hangouts felt different, better, charged with possibility. She started texting me good morning with a coffee emoji. I'd send her funny memes during her lunch break, saving the ones I knew would make her snort laugh. When she had a bad day at work, I'd show up with takeout from her favorite Thai place, remembering her order perfectly. When I got sick with a summer cold, she brought me homemade soup and stayed to watch bad reality TV, making fun of the contestants until I felt better. The first time she kissed me, we were at her apartment making dinner. I was chopping vegetables and rambling about my terrible assistant principal, who seemed to exist solely to make teachers' lives harder. She just walked over, put her hand on my cheek with a tenderness that made me stop mid-sentence, and kissed me. Simple as that. No pretense, no poetry, just truth. When she pulled back, she said she'd been wanting to do that for weeks, maybe since that first coffee shop meeting. I dropped the knife, letting it clatter on the counter, and kissed her again. We decided to take things slow. Both of us had just gotten out of the Leo situation, still untangling what was real from what was performance. Neither of us had dated women before, though looking back, there had been signs we'd both ignored, but it felt right, natural, like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing, a conversation you'd been waiting your whole life to have. We kept it quiet at first, just between us, our own little world without any outside noise or judgment. We deserved something that was wholly ours after having our words and feelings plagiarized. But Leo found out. Of course he did. He always had a way of inserting himself into spaces where he wasn't wanted, like a song you can't get out of your head. I was at the grocery store when I first realized he knew. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, just a photo of Sophia and me from the book signing, taken from across the store. We were laughing at something, her hand on my arm. The caption read, "Interesting plot twist." My hands went cold around the shopping cart handle. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, the muzak too loud. I abandoned my groceries in the cereal aisle and called Sophia immediately. She answered on the first ring, voice tight and breathless. She'd gotten the same photo 5 minutes earlier. We agreed to meet at her place right away. When I got there, she was pacing her living room like a caged animal, wearing a path in her vintage Turkish rug. We tried to figure out how he'd found out. We'd been so careful. No social media posts, no public displays beyond normal friendship stuff. Then Sophia remembered her neighbor mentioning seeing her ex around the building a few days ago. She'd brushed it off, thinking he meant someone else. Now the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The texts started coming fast after that. Long rambling messages about betrayal and how we'd turned gay just to hurt him. How it wasn't natural, wasn't real, was just us bonding over hating him. Each message was more unhinged than the last, oscillating between pleading and accusatory. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Sophia actually did throw hers, then immediately regretted it when the screen cracked spiderweb patterns across our reflection. He started showing up places again. The coffee shop where we'd first met to compare notes about his plagiarism. The Vietnamese restaurant where we'd had our third not date, sharing spring rolls and secrets. Always sitting just far enough away to claim coincidence. Always watching with those eyes that used to make me feel special. Now they just made my skin crawl like insects marching down my spine. Sophia's sister called one afternoon while we were trying to watch a movie and forget about everything. Leo had contacted her on LinkedIn of all places, asking if she knew her sister was going through something, and offering to help. Her sister told him to get lost in much more colorful language, but it rattled Sophia. He was expanding his reach, trying to get to us through the people we loved. I started checking my car before getting in, peering into the back seat like a scene from a horror movie, looking over my shoulder when I walked to work. Sophia installed a doorbell camera after finding flowers on her doorstep 3 mornings in a row, always sunflowers, which she'd once told him were her favorites during a happier time. The cards were unsigned, but we knew. The handwriting was disguised, but the sentiment was pure Leo. 2 weeks into this new harassment campaign, things escalated. I was leaving work late, exhausted from parent-teacher conferences and difficult conversations about standardized testing, when I found Leo sitting on my car hood, just sitting there like he owned the place, scrolling through his phone with practiced nonchalance. I stopped dead in the parking lot, keys between my fingers like I'd learned in that self-defense class I'd taken in college. He looked up and smiled that crooked smile that used to make me weak, said he just wanted to talk, to understand. His voice had that reasonable tone he used when he was about to say something completely unreasonable. I told him to get off my car. He slid down slowly, hands up like he was harmless, like he hadn't been terrorizing us for weeks. Started talking about how he'd been thinking, how maybe this could work for all of us, how some people have multiple partners and it's beautiful and natural, how he could date both of us and we could date each other and everyone wins. I laughed. Actually laughed in his face, which wasn't smart, but I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all just bubbled up and out. Told him he was delusional if he thought either of us wanted anything to do with him. His face changed then, that mask slipping to show something uglier underneath. He said I was making a mistake, that Sophia and I were just confused, rebounding into each other's arms, that we'd realize soon enough we needed him. I got in my car and locked the doors while he was still talking, his words muffled through the glass. Drove home with shaking hands and called Sophia from my driveway. She came over with Thai food and a baseball bat she'd bought that day. We ate pad CEW and made a safety plan like we were preparing for war. In a way, I suppose we were. The emails got worse after that. Pages and pages of stream of consciousness rambling about divine feminine energy and how we were meant to be a trinity. How he'd had dreams about us all living together, sharing everything. How his therapist said he needed closure, but what he really needed was us. Sophia printed them all out, highlighting the parts that seemed most unhinged. We were building a file just in case. The stack grew thicker every day. He tried to get to me through work next. Showed up at my school during lunch with a story about being my cousin, needing to tell me about a family emergency. The secretary, bless her, didn't buy it. She'd been working there for 20 years and could smell BS from a mile away. Called me down to confirm. I took one look at him standing there in his stupid vintage jacket, holding grocery store flowers wrapped in cellophane, and asked security to escort him out. My principal had to file an official report. The other teachers started asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. I hated that he'd made his drama my workplace gossip. Sophia had it worse. He somehow figured out her freelance clients and emailed them all about her unprofessional behavior and mental health crisis. Lost her 2 accounts before she could do damage control. She spent a whole night night crying on my couch, angry tears about how he was trying to destroy her life because she wouldn't play his sick game. I held her while she shook with rage and grief for the life she'd built, that he was systematically dismantling. We went to the police station together on a Thursday morning, sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs that squeaked every time we moved, and tried to explain the situation to a bored-looking officer who kept asking why we'd dated him in the first place if he was so bad. Sophia's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight enough to leave marks. We filed for restraining orders, both of us, though the officer warned they were hard to get approved without proof of physical threats. That night we made dinner at my place, trying to feel normal. Sophia was quiet, pushing pasta around her plate, the sauce congealing as it cooled. I asked what she was thinking. She said she was scared but also angry, really angry, that he'd stolen so much from us already. Our words, our trust, our sense of safety. She didn't want him to steal this too, whatever this was between us. I walked around the table and kissed her then. Not soft or tentative like our first kiss had been. Something fiercer, more certain. A claim and a promise wrapped up in one gesture. When we pulled apart, she was crying but smiling. Said she wasn't going to let him ruin this. Neither was I. We decided to go fully public after that. Not to spite him, but to stop hiding. Changed our relationship status on social media, posted a photo from the bookstore where we'd met to plan his takedown. The caption just said, "Plot twist." Sophia's sisters immediately called demanding details. My dad sent a text saying he was happy if I was happy, then asked if I was bringing her to Thanksgiving. My stepmom called 5 minutes later, pretending she hadn't heard from dad, fishing for information. Leo lost his mind. The messages came like a flood, each one more desperate than the last. How could we do this to him? How could we flaunt it? Didn't we understand we were soulmates? All three of us, connected by destiny. He'd forgive us for this betrayal if we just gave him a chance to explain his vision. Sophia blocked the new numbers as fast as he created them. I started leaving my phone on silent, checking it only when I felt brave enough. A week later, my doorbell rang at 2 in the morning. I jolted awake, heart racing like I'd been running. Sophia was spending the night, curled against me like a cat. She woke up when I moved, instantly alert with the hypervigilance we'd both developed. We crept to the door together, her clutching the baseball bat. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing but darkness. But when I opened the door a crack, chain still on, there was a box on my doorstep. Inside were printed screenshots of every message Sophia and I had ever sent each other. Highlighted sections where we'd talked about him, about us, about the future. Sticky notes with his commentary and his precise handwriting. See how you needed me to bring you together? This is proof of our connection. You're welcome. At the bottom was a photo of all three of us, badly photoshopped from separate pictures. We looked like a demented family portrait. Sophia called the police while I took photos of everything with shaking hands. They came and took the box as evidence, said it would help with the restraining orders. The officer who responded was younger, took us more seriously, said he'd seen this kind of escalation before and to be careful. His partner nodded, added that these situations could go bad fast. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, just sat on my couch drinking coffee that grew cold in our hands and talking about what to do. Sophia suggested we go stay with her parents for a while, just until things calmed down. I couldn't leave work in the middle of the semester, but we agreed she should go. She packed a bag that morning, kissed me goodbye like she was going to war. The day she left, I got a call from my landlord. Someone had complained about noise from my apartment, said I was running a business out of my home, had too many people coming and going at all hours. All lies, obviously. The landlord knew me, knew it was nonsense, but he had to tell me about the complaint, had to follow up, document everything. I knew exactly who'd made it. Sophia called that night from her childhood bedroom, whispering even though her parents were downstairs. Her parents were being amazing, her dad especially protective, but Leo had already found her there. Sent flowers to her parents' house with a note about missing his future in-laws. Her mom had thrown them straight in the trash and threatened to get their German Shepherd involved if he showed up in person. Her dad had added the local police station to his speed dial. I was walking to my car after work the next day when I saw him again. Not approaching, just standing across the parking lot, watching. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, making him look like a specter. I kept walking, phone already in my hand ready to call 911, but he didn't follow. Just stood there like a creepy statue until I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror until he disappeared. That night I installed my own cameras, borrowed some from the tech teacher at school who didn't ask questions, just handed them over with a knowing look, pointed them at my door, my car, the walkway to my apartment. Sophia helped me set up the app from her parents' house, both of us pretending this was normal, just a regular Tuesday night activity for a new couple. We tested them by having her watch while I walked around outside, making sure there were no blind spots. The restraining orders were approved a week later, temporary ones, but it was something. We had to go to court to make them permanent, present our evidence to a judge. The thought made me sick, but Sophia said we'd do it together, always together. She'd drive back for it, stay with me the night before. Leo was served with the papers on a Monday. I know because the text started again immediately from yet another new number, just one word over and over. Why? Like a broken record, filling my screen with that single syllable. I screenshot everything and didn't respond. Sophia got the same messages. We were building quite the collection. 2 days later, things went sideways in a whole new way. I was at school teaching my third period class about metaphors in poetry when the principal knocked on my door. Her face told me something was wrong before she even spoke. She pulled me into the hallway and said there was a situation. Someone had called in a false report about me, said I was unstable, shouldn't be around children. They had to follow protocol, put me on administrative leave while they investigated. I knew immediately who'd done it. Went home in the middle of the day feeling numb, my students' confused faces haunting me. Called Sophia from my couch still in my teaching clothes. She was already driving back from her parents' house before I finished explaining. Said she'd be there in 3 hours and to double check all the locks. I heard her car accelerating through the phone. While I waited, I called my union representative, explained the situation, the restraining order, the escalating harassment. She said she'd seen this before, usually with messy divorces, told me to document everything and that the investigation would clear me, but it might take time. Time I didn't have, with bills to pay and a life to live. Time that would let rumors spread and fester. Sophia arrived with reinforcements. Her sister Amy, the one who told Leo to get lost on LinkedIn. Amy was a paralegal, had ideas about civil suits and harassment charges. We spent the evening making plans over Chinese takeout that none of us really ate, how to fight back legally, how to protect ourselves, how to make him stop without stooping to his level. But Leo wasn't done. That weekend, while Sophia and I were at the farmer's market trying to feel normal, buying overpriced tomatoes and pretending everything was fine, he struck again. Sophia's apartment had been broken into. Nothing Nothing stolen, but things were moved. Her photos rearranged. Her clothes reorganized by color. A book left on her pillow. The same poetry collection that had started everything. Inside, every poem about love was highlighted in yellow. The violation of it made us both sick. The police dusted for fingerprints but found nothing useful. The lock hadn't been forced. No windows broken. Sophia remembered she'd given Leo a spare key months ago, back when she trusted him. She'd asked for it back after the engagement party fiasco, but he'd claimed he lost it. We had the locks changed that day. Then she packed up and moved in with me officially. Living together wasn't how we'd planned it. Not 3 months into whatever we were. Not because some unstable ex was making our lives hell. But there was something defiant about it too. Like we were choosing each other in spite of him. Not because of him. Sophia turned my spare room into an office. Set up her design equipment by the window where the morning light was best. I cleared out half my closet, made space for her in every room. We adopted a routine that felt both new and inevitable. The false report at my job was dismissed after a week of investigation. My principal apologized, said she knew it was harassment related to my personal situation. The other teachers rallied around me, offering support and covered classes. But the damage was done. Parents had heard rumors. I caught suspicious looks at pickup time, whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. My reputation, carefully built over years, tarnished by his lies. Sophia's work was suffering too. Clients were nervous about the drama, even though she'd explained the situation. She lost another account, spent hours on the phone doing damage control. We were both bleeding money, stressed about bills on top of everything else. Leo was destroying our lives in slow motion, and we couldn't make him stop. 3 weeks after the break-in, we got a registered letter. Legal looking, official seal and everything. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from Leo's lawyer, claiming we were harassing him, that our restraining orders were based on lies, that we'd conspired to humiliate him and ruin his reputation, that he was considering suing for defamation and emotional distress. Sophia laughed when she read it. Not a happy laugh, but something dark and bitter. Said of course he'd found a way to be the victim in his own story. We called Amy immediately. She read through the letter and said it was mostly nonsense, a scare tactic. But we'd need our own lawyer now, just to respond. More money we didn't have for a fight we didn't want. I found Sophia crying in the bathroom that night. Really crying, not the angry tears I'd seen before. She said she was exhausted, that she'd thought leaving him would be the end of it, but it was just the beginning. That she felt stupid for ever loving him, for not seeing what he was. I held her on the bathroom floor and told her she wasn't stupid, that he was good at what he did, at making people believe his version of reality, that we'd get through this together. We went to see a lawyer the next day, a friend of Amy's who specialized in harassment cases. She looked at our file, all the evidence we'd collected, and said we had a strong case for a civil suit, that his letter was actually helpful, proved he was still trying to control the narrative. We signed papers and wrote another check we couldn't afford. Justice was expensive. Leo must have sensed the walls closing in because his tactics changed. The direct harassment stopped, but weird things kept happening. Sophia's Instagram was hacked, old photos deleted and replaced with quotes about forgiveness. My Spotify started playing his playlists at random times. Amazon packages we didn't order showed up at my door. Books about polyamory, relationship repair, finding your soulmate, all paid for with gift cards, untraceable. We changed every password, enabled two-factor authentication on everything, put fraud alerts on our credit. It felt like preparing for digital warfare. Sophia joked darkly that we should write a handbook, how to date after your ex turns into a stalker. I said we'd make millions. We laughed because the alternative was screaming. The court date for the permanent restraining orders came on a gray Thursday. We dressed carefully, professionally. Sophia wore the suit she'd bought for job interviews. I wore my teaching clothes. Looked like responsible adults, not the mess we felt like inside. Amy came for moral support, sat behind us in the courtroom. Leo showed up looking perfect. New haircut, expensive suit, that charming smile turned up to 11. He'd brought character witnesses. His mother, who'd always loved him blindly. A colleague who testified about his good character. His therapist, who said he was making progress processing his abandonment issues. We presented our evidence methodically. The messages, the break-in, the false reports. Our lawyer was thorough, professional. Leo's lawyer tried to paint us as vindictive exes, suggested we'd started dating to hurt his client. The judge, a tired-looking woman who'd probably seen worse, didn't buy it. She granted both restraining orders. 5 years, no contact. Leo's face crumpled for just a second before the mask went back up. His mother glared at us like we'd murdered her son. We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, Amy whooping behind us. It felt like winning, but also like the middle of something, not the end. We went for coffee after. The three of us crammed into a booth at the place that had become our unofficial headquarters. Sophia was quiet, staring at her latte. I asked what she was thinking. She said she was relieved but also sad, that this wasn't how she'd pictured her life going, that she'd lost herself somewhere in Leo's fantasy and was still finding her way back. I told her I understood, that I felt the same way sometimes, like I was still untangling what was real from what was performance. But this, us, sitting in this coffee shop planning our next move, this was real. She smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd seen all day. Amy raised her coffee cup for a toast, to restraining orders and new beginnings and women who don't take anyone's crap. We clinked our mugs together, laughing at the absurdity of it all. The barista probably thought we were crazy. Maybe we were, a little. But Leo wasn't done. Of course he wasn't. The restraining orders should have been the end of it. Should have been when Leo finally got the message and crawled back under whatever rock he'd come from. But if I'd learned anything about him, it was that he didn't understand boundaries. Not when we were dating, and definitely not now. 2 weeks after court, Sophia's mom called her crying. Someone had sent a letter to her workplace, her church, and 3 of her neighbors. The letters claimed Sophia was in an abusive relationship with me, that I was controlling her, had turned her against her family. All signed, a concerned friend. Sophia's mom didn't believe it for a second, but her church friends were asking questions. Her boss pulled her aside to check if everything was okay at home. We knew it was Leo. The writing style, the manipulation, the attempt to isolate Sophia from her support system. But he'd been careful. No fingerprints, mailed from different post offices across the city. Nothing that directly violated the restraining order. He was playing a longer game now. Sophia drove home that weekend to do damage control. I wanted to go with her, but she said it would be better if she went alone. Didn't want to make things worse. I spent the weekend installing more cameras and jumping at every noise. Ordered pepper spray online and practiced using it in my backyard until the neighbors started giving me weird looks. She came back Sunday night exhausted but determined. Said her family was fully on board now. Understood what we were dealing with. Her dad had apparently given a speech at church about gossip and judgment that made two ladies cry. Her mom had printed out information about stalking and harassment to hand out to anyone who asked questions. Small town solidarity at its finest. Monday morning, I got called into a meeting with my principal and the school board president. Someone had been calling board members, claiming I was unstable, shouldn't be around children. Same song, different verse. They assured me they didn't believe it, but they had to document every complaint. The union rep sat next to me taking notes while I explained again about Leo, about the restraining order, about the harassment that wouldn't stop. The board president, an older woman named Deborah, who'd been teaching for 30 years before moving to administration, leaned forward and said she'd dealt with a stalker ex-husband back in the 80s. Said the only thing that stopped him was when she moved 3 states away and changed her name. Not exactly encouraging, but she promised they'd support me, wouldn't let anonymous complaints affect my job. Sophia was having her own work drama. Someone kept creating fake email accounts with variations of her name, contacting her clients with bizarre messages, saying she was closing her business, moving to Peru, joining a cult. Always just believable enough that clients called her confused. She spent hours doing damage control, explaining the situation over and over. We changed her business email, set up filters, but new fake accounts kept popping up like whack-a-mole. 3 weeks after the restraining orders, I was grocery shopping when I saw him. Not Leo, his friend Marcus from college, the one who'd called him disgusting at the engagement party. Marcus saw me and tried to duck down the cereal aisle, but I was faster. Cornered him by the cornflakes and asked what he was doing there. This wasn't even his neighborhood. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight and avoiding eye contact. Finally admitted Leo had asked him to check on me, see how I was doing. Said Leo was worried about me, thought I was making bad choices. I told Marcus about the restraining order, the harassment, the whole mess. His face went pale. He hadn't known about any of it. Leo had told him we'd had a messy breakup, but that was it. Marcus apologized profusely, said he'd had no idea, promised he wouldn't report back to Leo, would actually tell him to leave us alone. I wanted to believe him, but trust was hard to come by these days. Finished my shopping looking over my shoulder, wondering who else Leo had recruited for his information network. That night, Sophia and I sat down with a bottle of wine and made a list. Every mutual friend, every place we frequented, every possible way Leo could get information about us. It was depressingly long. We started making changes. New coffee shop, new grocery store, new gym. It felt like witness protection, except we hadn't done anything wrong. Sophia's sister Amy called the next day with news. She'd been doing some digging through her paralegal networks and found something interesting. Leo had done this before. Not the exact same situation, but similar. An ex from his college days had filed a police report about harassment that sounded eerily familiar. The case had been dropped when she moved away, but the pattern was there. We called our lawyer immediately. This could help our civil case, show a pattern of behavior. She said she'd look into it, see if the other woman would be willing to testify or provide a statement. I felt sick thinking about some other girl going through this years ago, alone, without anyone to compare notes with. A week later, things escalated again. I woke up to find my car tires slashed. All 4, neat cuts that meant I needed complete replacements. The cameras didn't catch anything. Whoever did it knew where the blind spots were. While I was waiting for the tow truck, my neighbor Frank mentioned he'd seen my cousin hanging around the night before. Described Leo perfectly, but seeing someone near my car wasn't enough evidence, especially when we couldn't prove it was actually him. Sophia was at a client meeting when it happened. She came home to find me stress baking my 4th batch of cookies and immediately knew something was wrong. I told her about the tires and she just pulled me into a hug. We stood there in my flour-covered kitchen holding each other while the cookies burned. The next morning we woke up to find Sophia's car keyed. Long scratches down both sides spelling out words I won't repeat. This time the cameras caught a figure in a hoodie, but the footage was too grainy to prove identity. We filed another police report, added it to our ever-growing file. The officer taking the report looked tired, said these cases were hard to prosecute without concrete evidence. Sophia broke down in the police station parking lot, said she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't live like this, always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for the next attack. I held her while she cried, made soothing noises I didn't believe. Truth was, I was scared too. This was escalating and we couldn't make it stop. We called a meeting with Amy and our lawyer that afternoon, laid out everything that had happened since the restraining orders. The lawyer said we could file criminal harassment charges, but warned it would be hard to prove Leo was behind everything. Circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. We needed him on camera, needed direct proof. Amy had a different idea. She'd been talking to the ex from college, the one who'd filed the old police report. The woman, Cynthia, was willing to help. She'd moved on, was married with kids now, but she remembered the fear. Said if she could help stop him from doing this to someone else, she would. We set up a video call with Cynthia that weekend. She looked normal, happy, like someone who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. She told us her story, and it was like listening to our own experiences in a different key. The love bombing, the plagiarism, the escalation when she tried to leave, the harassment that only stopped when she moved across the country. But here was the interesting part. She'd kept everything. Every message, every letter, every piece of evidence from 15 years ago. Said she knew someday it might matter. We spent 3 hours going through it all, building a pattern of behavior that spanned decades. Our lawyer was practically salivating over the evidence. The civil suit paperwork was filed the following Monday. Harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Our lawyer said having Cynthia's evidence made it much stronger. Leo would be served within the week. We braced ourselves for whatever would come next. What came next was silence. Blessed, suspicious silence. No messages, no vandalism, no fake emails. For 2 weeks, nothing. Sophia and I didn't trust it. Kept checking our cameras, looking over our shoulders, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But days passed and nothing happened. Then Sophia got a call from her mom. Leo had shown up at their house with his mother, trying to apologize. Said he'd been going through something but was better now. Wanted to make amends. Sophia's dad had stood in the doorway like a guardian angel and told them to leave before he called the police. Leo's mother had cried, begged them to understand her son was hurting. They left, but it rattled Sophia's parents. I was grading papers when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. It was Leo's mother. She was crying, begging me to drop the lawsuit. Said it would ruin his life, his future, that he was a good boy who'd made mistakes. I tried to explain about the restraining order, that she shouldn't be contacting me, but she kept talking. Said we'd driven him to this, that if we'd just given him a chance to explain his vision for the 3 of us, none of this would have happened. I hung up and immediately called our lawyer. She said to document everything, but that one phone call from his mother wasn't enough to do anything about. The apple clearly didn't fall far from the tree when it came to respecting boundaries. Sophia came home to find me stress cleaning the bathroom. She took the sponge out of my hand and led me to the couch. We sat there in silence for a while, processing this new development. Finally, she said we needed to be ready for him to escalate again. The lawsuit would push him to new extremes. We were right. 3 days later, I got a call from my dad. Someone had sent him a long email about how I was in a cult, being brainwashed by Sophia, needed intervention. My dad, bless him, had forwarded it to me with just one line. "This ex of yours seems unhinged." But other family members weren't as savvy. My aunt called concerned. My cousin texted asking if I was okay. Sophia's work email was hacked again. This time the hacker sent messages to all her clients saying she was closing her business due to mental health issues. She lost 3 more accounts before she could do damage control. We were hemorrhaging money between the lawyer fees and lost work. Leo was trying to destroy us financially since he couldn't get to us physically. Then came the letters to my school. Not complaints this time, but concern about my lifestyle and how it might influence students. Carefully worded to sound reasonable while planting seeds of doubt. The principal called me in again, told me to ignore them, but I could see the strain on her face. She was getting pressure from parents who'd received anonymous emails about me. Sophia and I spent a Friday night creating new identities online. Not fake ones, just careful ones. Professional emails with no personal information. Social media locked down tight. We joked darkly about going off the grid entirely, living in a cabin in the woods where Leo couldn't find us. It didn't seem that funny anymore. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Sophia had a big presentation for a potential client that could make up for some of the lost income. She'd worked on it for weeks, perfecting every detail. I kissed her goodbye that morning and wished her luck. She texted me at noon that it went great. They loved her ideas. Then at 2, she called crying. The client had received an email right after her presentation from her business email address, which had been hacked again. The email was unhinged, talking about spiritual awakening and polyamorous destiny and how the design work was secondary to spreading a message of love. The client had withdrawn their offer on the spot. Sophia had tried to explain, but the damage was done. I left work early, told my principal I had an emergency, found Sophia at home surrounded by printed emails and legal documents, laptop open to her empty bank account. She looked up at me with red eyes and said she couldn't do this anymore, that he was winning, that maybe we should just give up, move away, start over somewhere else. I sat down next to her and we cried together, for our savings draining away, for our reputations in tatters, for the life we'd been trying to build that he kept tearing down. Then I got angry, really angry, the kind of anger that burns clean and clarifies everything. I called Amy and our lawyer, said we needed to go on the offensive. No more playing defense while he destroyed our lives piece by piece. The lawyer mentioned we could file for an emergency hearing given the escalation, push for criminal charges, not just civil. Amy said she'd been building a file of our own, had some ideas about Leo's vulnerabilities. Turns out Leo's job didn't know about any of this. He'd been careful to keep his professional life separate from his stalking hobby, but Amy had connections, ways of making sure relevant information reached relevant people. Not lies or exaggerations, just documentation of his behavior. The restraining orders, the civil suit, the pattern of harassment. Within a week, Leo was put on administrative leave from his marketing firm. Suddenly, he was the one dealing with professional consequences. His LinkedIn disappeared overnight. Former colleagues started distancing themselves. One reached out to Sophia to apologize, said they'd had no idea what he was capable of. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. We spent the weekend preparing, organizing evidence, practicing testimony. Cynthia flew in to testify in person, said it was worth it to see him face consequences finally. We met her for dinner Saturday night. She was exactly what I'd pictured. Strong, settled, proof that there was life after Leo. Monday morning we walked into court armed with boxes of evidence. Leo was there with his lawyer and mother, looking haggard. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. For a second I almost felt bad for him. Then I remembered my slashed tires, Sophia's destroyed career, the constant fear we'd lived with for months. The hearing was brutal. We presented everything. The messages, the vandalism, the hacking, the financial destruction. Cynthia testified about her experience, how the pattern was identical. Our lawyer connected the dots, showed how he'd systematically tried to destroy our lives when we wouldn't play his game. Leo's lawyer tried to argue it was all circumstantial, that anyone could have done these things, but the judge wasn't buying it. She'd reviewed the evidence over the weekend, saw the clear pattern. She asked Leo directly if he'd contacted us since the restraining order. He said no. She asked about his mother's call to me. His face went white. The judge issued a criminal harassment charge on the spot, set bail high enough that his mother's tears couldn't pay it. Leo was let out in handcuffs while his mother wailed about injustice. Sophia grabbed my hand so tight I thought bones might break. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. Outside the courthouse, Cynthia hugged us both, said she was proud of us for fighting back, for not letting him win, gave us her number and said to call if we ever needed to talk to someone who understood. Then she flew back to her normal life, her husband and kids who'd never have to know what she'd survived. The criminal case would take months to resolve, but the immediate threat was over. Leo was facing real consequences for the first time in his life. His job was gone, his reputation destroyed, his freedom in jeopardy. The civil suit would likely bankrupt him. He'd lost everything trying to destroy us. Sophia and I went home to our apartment with its cameras and new locks and pepper spray by the door. We ordered Chinese food and ate it straight from the containers, too exhausted to pretend at normal dinner behavior. She asked if I thought it was really over. I said I didn't know, but for the first time in months, I could breathe. We started rebuilding slowly. Sophia reached out to old clients, explained the situation now that there were criminal charges to point to. Some came back, others didn't, but new ones appeared too. Word of mouth from people who'd heard her story and wanted to support her. My school stood by me, the principal personally addressing rumors at a PTA meeting. 6 months later, Leo pleaded guilty to avoid trial, got probation, mandatory therapy, and a permanent record that would follow him forever. He had to pay restitution for the damaged cars and lost income. His mother sent one last letter saying we'd ruined her son's life. We threw it away unopened. Sophia and I moved to a new apartment across town, not running away, just starting fresh. We kept the cameras because trust takes time to rebuild, but we also painted the walls yellow, adopted a cat named Gertrude, and hung art that had nothing to do with poetry or stolen words. One night we were cooking dinner together, music playing, Gertrude weaving between our legs begging for scraps. Sophia was laughing at something stupid I'd said, flour in her hair from the bread she was making. I looked at her and thought about how we'd built this life not because of Leo, but in spite of him, how we'd chosen each other over and over through through the worst of it. She caught me staring and asked what I was thinking. I told her I loved her. Simple as that. No poetry, no plagiarized words, just truth. She kissed me there in our kitchen with dinner burning on the stove and the cat yowling for attention. It was perfect in its imperfection. Real in a way Leo's fantasies never were. We never heard from him again. Sometimes I check the court records, make sure he's complying with probation, but mostly we just live. Sophia's business is thriving. I got promoted to department head. We take cooking classes on Saturdays and have Amy over for dinner once a month. Normal, boring, beautiful life. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I missed. The love bombing, the plagiarism, the way he collected pieces of people like butterflies pinned to a board. But I can also see how Sophia and I found each other in the wreckage, built something real from the ashes of his lies. So yeah, that's the story of how I met my girlfriend. Not exactly a meet cute for the ages, but it's ours. Messy and complicated and true. And unlike Leo's version of events, every word of it is real. Sophia says we should write a book about it someday. I tell her we've had enough of books and poetry for a lifetime. She laughs and agrees, then suggests a podcast instead. We're still debating, but for now, we're just living, one honest day at a time.